All right, guys, market update time. In this video specifically, we're going to be going over everything related to Hernando County and some of the data points we're seeing on showings, buyers, and trends in our area that might help you make a decision on whether or not buying is the right time right now or waiting a little bit more into the future. So we're going to answer all of those questions today. So James, market updates, how important do you think those are in relation to buying and selling and just kind of knowing what's out there?
Huge. Yeah. I mean, it's a great set of data to use to make decisions, right?
Mm.
So when is the right time to buy? When is the right time to sell? And that's for the folks that have a little more control. There's some people who are in need, and then they have a shorter window of when they can choose to do those things. But the more you know about the market, the more educated of a decision that you can make on when your timing is.
Gotcha. So we have a few tools available to us that aren't really available to other people. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you some of the data sets in the last 3 months, and then we're going to also look at what's going on within those data sets to kind of break down the different type of buyers. So in Hernando County, we have a wide range. So we have properties that list for $100,000 and properties that list for well over $1 million. And they're quite a different demographic when it comes to servicing what those look like. So what expectations you may have on a $200,000 property may not be the same on like a $700,000 or $800,000 property. And we're going to see that very well in the next couple slides. So I'm going to put that on the screen right now. All right. So here we have something called Area Pro that hasn't actually been released yet, but it gives us a good insight of what's going on data-wise in the Hernando County area. So let's go over some of the things that it's talking about right now. So overall, we have a 3.3 month supply of inventory. We have 1,206 active homes. The current days on market is about 77 days on market. We have 583 homes pending, and we have a pending ratio of about 48%. So now let's talk a little bit about what's happened in the last 3 months. 1,089 homes sold. The average days on market is 54. The average number of homes sold per month is 363. And the percentage of list price ratio is 97.6. Now, assuming you've never actually seen any of this data before, we're going to break down a couple of key numbers. List price ratio is the percentage that you can expect to pay when it comes to a home.
In other words, 2.4% was the negotiation. So basically take a calculator out, and if you're looking at a $300,000 house, multiply that times 97.6% or 0.976. It'll give you the number that the average that everybody has paid for that house at $300,000.
All right, so 3.3 months supply of inventory is how long the market expects to turn over everything that's in its kind of inventory at the moment.
Another way of thinking about months of inventory, just to add that in there, is if no homes hit the market. So if not another home hit the market, it would take 3.3 months for the current supply of inventory to disappear. And that's if not another home hit the market.
And now that's where we start getting into whether or not we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. And so right now there's a little bit of a debate on which kind of market we're in. And that's a little bit of the forecast is, are we going to be turning into a buyer's market? Are we already into a buyer's market? And what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive a little bit. So there's this chart here on the right that's going to break down months supply of inventory by price point. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see the month supply of inventory. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. And on the bottom here, you're going to see the price points all the way up to $1 million home. So what we're looking at is homes that are priced over $600,000 have over a 12-month supply of inventory, 12.4 month supply. So based on the data points, it looks like we have a lot of $600,000 homes on the market that it would probably be fair to say that in this particular segment, we are in more of a buyer's market. Would you agree on that?
In that segment. So as you're going up here, we're more in a buyer's market. I would say as we're working down at the side of here, jumping ahead of you, it's right in between. I mean, 2 to 4 months is, I mean, the conditions are a little funny, but that is more neutral or seller leaning. When you get up over 4 months supply of inventory, you're starting to lean towards the buyer.
So what do we say? So the average price in Hernando County is $320,000. So we're going to look at the $320,000 kind of price point, and it looks like we have a 2.8 month supply of inventory in that area. So it's not exactly over 3, so it's definitely a bit of a thing when you look at that. Now, here's where we're going to start to get interesting. Active listings. Okay. This green area is the bulk of our county. So 200 to about 500,000. And so we see that the active listings right now is 234 active listings in the 300 to $350,000 range. We have 157 active listings from 250 to 300,000, and we have 211 listings right now from anywhere from 350 to 400,000. But then you see that big spike here. We have 177 active listings of $600,000 or more. And so that's a little bit of an anomaly here on this side of the equation, which is probably leading to why that particular price point is having such a much more inventory kind of inventory sensitive. Okay, so average days on market. So average days on market, depending on the listing, is hovering anywhere between 60 and 100, depending on the type of listing that it is. A little bit of an anomaly here with the 75 to 100K, but I do think that's a different type of home.
Yep.
So I don't think that that's going to make a huge difference. But when you're looking at the price point that we're most sensitive to in our area, 65, 63, 69, 72. So we're kind of hovering in the same range here that it'll take about 2 months, give or take,
Yep.
on market before your listing is sold. So now when we're talking to sellers and setting expectations, sellers want to sell their home as quickly as possible, right?
Yep.
How do we use this data to prepare them for what it is that they should expect?
So if we're talking amongst ourselves or we're talking to other real estate agents, it's being honest. It's showing the data. There's no rabbit in the hat.
Mm-hmm.
It's not coming out. So if the data is showing us that you're 60 days on market, if you want to get the most amount of money for your house, it's likely going to take that amount of time for it to sell. Now, if you need to have it sell quickly, you could always list your home for less. But for that kind of time, you're usually going to lose in terms of your top dollar.
Gotcha.
To get something to move faster, lower price.
Okay. So, sold properties. This is the meat and potatoes. This is where a good amount of Hernando County is going to reside in this bracket here, from 200,000 to about 400,000. We could see that the number of properties sold, 118 in that price point in the last 3 months, 197 and 250 to 300, 251 from 3 to 350, and 350 to 400 is 170. So we see that this is a majority of where our sales are going to be in the area, which supports the median price point in what we're doing. Let's talk a little bit about inventory right now. So right now we have a graph going on what's going on inventory wise in Florida year over year. So we're going to focus a little bit on Hernando County. And right now, Hernando County in May of 2023 had 710 homes for sale in the month of May, right? So in May of 2023, 710 homes went for sale in the market. In May of 2024, we have 1,070. So we have an inventory growth of 50% year over year. So now, Pasco County is up 103%. Hillsborough County is up 76.5%. Pinellas is up 99.1%. Citrus is up 52%. So these are all of our surrounding counties. So James, what do you think is happening inventory-wise in our area?
I mean, that just pretty straightforward. So inventory is rising, and anytime inventory is rising, it's a demand issue, supply and demand. So new homes are consistently going to hit the market, and if you have enough demand to offset the new homes, your inventory remains stable, right? If your inventory is climbing, it means you don't have enough buyers to answer the supply. You don't have enough demand to answer the supply, which comes down to the factors you would think, right? The rising interest rates, the higher prices, all of the I mean, there's a lot of reasons in the economy and on the global scale why people might be slowing down, but ultimately that's caused inventory to rise.
Yeah, and so we see like Hernando hasn't even been hit as hard on an inventory level as some of our surrounding counties. Do you think that's better for sellers and for buyers, or do you think that what do you think is going to make an impact on that? Because we hear a lot of the issues in terms of affordability. So inventory obviously plays a part in that.
Yeah, so supply and demand typically creates a stable market, a declining or an inclining market. So the less amount of homes that you have to choose from, and the more people that are choosing those homes, your prices are going to rise. So the lower amount of inventory change is a better factor for sellers in our area and less of a factor for buyers. But the truth is that it still works. That's on an overall. Like you'd rather be a seller in Hernando County than Pasco County with that kind of growth in inventory versus here. As a buyer, you're still in a good spot because inventory is climbing. So it doesn't matter where you are for a buyer. Your inventory is climbing. You're able to get better deals.
All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper in Hernando County. So pulling up this data, inventory growth, we see that inventory dropped precipitously into COVID and then rose tremendously.
235 as well.
All right. And so we've actually our inventory hasn't been growing as much as some other counties. But I think on a numbers basis, we can see that we've gone from 235 homes for sale in 2021 in that month to 417 to 710 to 1070, which is now what we would call pre-pandemic levels.
Yep.
Right, which is a term you're going to hear a lot.
Yep.
And people are using it to kind of gauge, because we know the pandemic was an anomaly.
Yep.
And so now when it looks like we had a significant dip through that, that's not real, right? That was caused by a force of nature, act of God.
Yep.
And now we're back, but now we're back above pre-pandemic levels. Right, so let's look at home value year over year.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's growth.
Yeah, this is the growth in values. And so we see that going into the pandemic, we were going, 173 to 188, so 8%. Then we went 20% in 1 year. Then we went another 34. Okay. So we shot up 50% values in less than 2 years. And now we're normalizing kind of 2.8 and starting to get into the more historical average of appreciation, which is about 3 to 4% per year.
Yep.
Now, here's the hard question. Do you think any of this will ever go away? Or do you think that this growth percentage is here to stay?
This is a question I get asked all the time in a different way, right? Is the market going to crash? What's going to happen? What I can tell you in a different video that Andre and I did, it's worth going to look at. We talked a lot about inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this normal number, right? Like these changes right here are much more similar to that conversation, right? When you start to look at what's the value of a dollar, the value of a home essentially doesn't change. It's just reflected by the value of the dollar, right? So as the value of money becomes less, the amount of dollars that it takes in order to buy the home becomes more. So when you're asking me, does this continue? Yeah, I think that homes continue to be, it takes more dollars in order to afford the home because the value of the dollar will continue to diminish.
Right. And it goes along into the inflation conversation we were just saying, like we're measuring inflation as a year over year, and the year over year is 3.1 or 3, somewhere in that area. And with the Fed's goal being somewhere in the twos, but nobody's accounting for the 20% or 10 to 20 that happened in those 3 years of that pandemic. So we're not trying to drop and go into deflation to get those old prices back, because that's already been assumed that those prices won't come back. It's really, we're trying to normalize the future rate of inflation and not the past. And I think that in home values is quite the same. I don't think that you're going to suddenly lose the 50% that you gained.
No. Yeah, I don't think that we're going to take that line where on the other graph, it kind of went straight up and then straight up. And we're trying to do that by coming straight down. Like this is a home value growth chart. Like if you were just to look at, change it to home values, do you have that one there? Because that could confuse people as you're looking at the growth chart, thinking the way that this is working. Yeah, home value. So you can see here, this was the bubble, right? This is back in 08, massive reduction here. And this is because the amount of inventory went through the roof.
Right.
And when the amount of inventory goes through the roof and there wasn't a whole lot of demand for the houses, the people that were coming in were able to hammer prices, and it just caused prices to continue to go down and go down. Now, steady. Holy moly. All of a sudden, we got to 0% from the Fed. People were getting 2.5, 3% interest rates. Because of that, the amount of demand went insane, and the amount of inventory went down, and there's a ton of people that are fighting for each house, which everybody remembers. Giant growths in between that period. And then you start to normalize, and I would guess that this period is right around when the interest rates went back up.
Right.
So is there a place where this happens again is really the question that everybody asks me. And the thing that you need for this to happen is one of two things. You need a massive increase in inventory, or you need a massive decrease in demand. So it's one versus the other. That desperation has to be huge in order to get this kind of reduction. Where's it going to come from? So if you're watching this, we're not going to pull it up here on this. Look up, just Google what are foreclosure rates right now. What are the amount of people in forbearance? You're going to find that they're actually in all-time record lows. So that wave of properties that would create this is nowhere to be found.
Right.
And on top of that, sellers right now that have these low rates compared to the higher rates, they're going to stay stuck. Like they're going to stay in their house for longer than they normally would if they had a traditional rate and there was less variance in between what today's rates were and what they had. Long and short to say, to create this, the variables are just not there. So you're going to see more of stabilization.
Right. And I don't think that anybody, even if you look at this, if you remember what it was like during that time, and those who are asking for a crash probably are not thinking about the impact and devastation on those around them.
Yeah.
In order for something like that to happen.
Oh yeah, lots of people out of jobs.
Oh, just massive devastation for our entire way of life. Yeah. And so I don't even know if we could, as an economy, survive another one of those. Yeah. Because of what it took. So the bailout package in 2008 was 800 billion.
Yeah.
That was 800 billion to fix this. We're in the massive amounts of trillions now. What it would take to fix something like that.
Yeah.
So,
I bet you could take this same number or somewhere right about in here, like 169, and then whatever the delta is between this to here. So if that is twice as much, it's going to take at least twice as much. It's going to take at least 1.6 trillion in order to fix it, because the amount of banknotes is going to be twice the size because the volume is more.
So, that's kind of the. Do we want to see prices normalize and stabilize? For sure. But do I think that we're going to see we're seeing prices come down, and it'll find some sort of equilibrium, because there are some sort of price corrections happening kind of throughout the market right now. Cool. But there are some people who are asking for, or who are waiting for, this moment to come, and I don't know or see any data that says that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Go back to the growth chart, the one that you just had, the one with the percentages. So there's a lot of people watching this that are like this is contrary, and like they're thinking about this a different way. I want to be really clear. So what's this is 2.3 and this is 3.5. So there's a lot of people that have been sitting here. So this one right here is from 2022, 2.3, and then this one was 2023. There's a lot of people between 2022 and 2023 that decided to continue to rent the home that they're renting, and they were waiting for the market to crash. And then there was another group of people that saw the interest rates went up, and they're waiting for the interest rates to come down. I want to know what the loss is in that time they've been waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How much have they paid in rent? What would be the offset of that and the benefits that they would have saved in principal? What would have been the offsets of that they would have saved in taxes? And what would they have gotten in appreciation? And tell me where they're at in a net situation, choosing to rent and waiting for a market or crash, or choosing to rent and waiting for rates to come down. The homes are still appreciating.
Right.
So
we haven't had a negative appreciation year yet.
No.
So coming out of that. So this kind of gives you the idea of where home value growth is. This gives you the idea of where we are. So we've brought up here now showings. And so in our system, a good amount of realtors use an app called Showing Time. This is not inclusive of every showing that's out there, because some of them have instructions to call the list agent and stuff.
Yep.
But this is a good representative sample, apples to apples, of those that have used Showing Time in order to book showings for their listings. Yep. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to look year over year to see what has been the change in buyer demand. Now, what we do know is that there has been an increase in listings.
Yep.
But what net effect does that actually have on properties being sold? And so we're going to look at that. So on the right-hand side here, we're going to have 2023. And so it's broken down by price point here. So in 2023, we had basically in the month of May, so we're taking a 1 month representative sample. So we're going May for 2023 and May for 2024. So in May of 2023, we had in the average price point of 100 to 200,000, 3.85 showings per listing. From 200 to 299, 7.43 showings per listing. From 3 to 399, 6 showings per listing. 4 to 499, 5.12. And 500 to 600, 3.88. You can see the rest on the screen, but we're focusing on that because it's a good majority of the business that we do.
Yep.
But what we look now is 2024. And in 2024, we're seeing that these showings per listing are dropping. So in the 1 to 200K, 3 showings per listing, and 2 to 300K, 5.55, 3 to 400, 4.72, 4 to 500, 3.53, and 5 to 600, 2.82. So let's break down what that looks like. So in the 200 to 300,000 ratio, it is a 25% reduction year over year in showings per listing. For 3 to 400,000, it is a 21.5% reductions in showings year over year. For 400 to 500,000, it is a 31% reduction year over year in showings, and in the 500 to 600 category, we have a 27.5% reduction in listings. Now, caveat: we have more listings.
Yep.
Are there less buyers? Are there less? Is there more like, why would the percentage be down year over year, in your opinion?
So your inventory is up 50%, we learned, and then your buyer foot traffic is 24-ish%. Like the amount of showings that is happening is down 24%. I think it was a little bit of everything that you said. So you have more listings, which means that if you had the same amount of buyers, there would be less showings, right? Because there's just more homes that are on the market. I would argue that the more inventory causes the buyer, instead of seeing on average 5 homes to choose a home that they love, maybe it's 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it does go up. So there should be more showings happening per buyer when we're looking at this data set. But I would say that your buyer pool is the same or less with the growth in the inventory, right? So that's my guess at it. There's no way for us to know exactly where it sits, but I don't think that there's a tremendous amount of more buyers than there was back then.
The irony is, in 2024, we have more total showings on
Yeah.
each one of them. So the showings themselves, for the good majority of the price points, are up. Like I said, the higher the price point, the more likely you're going to have to coordinate a little bit more outside of showing time.
Yeah.
But in our main bracket, which is our 200 to about $500,000 price point,
Yeah.
there are more showings in pretty much every category except 5 to 600,000.
Yeah.
There are more showings this year.
Yes. Really.
Yeah, I mean, relative. And so now we're saying, but the ratio is lower.
Yeah.
And that's the big change. So if we're wondering, it's like, man, why does it feel like this is happening?
Less opportunities.
Less
your house has to get shown. That's an opportunity for it to sell. And the less opportunities you have for it to sell, less likely it is to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few tips for buyers when you're looking at properties, when you have more options to choose from, it's very easy to, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yep.
Refine your search, be as specific as possible. If you find yourself having a really, really big list when you put your basic parameters in, now just keep expanding that because in these price points, there are more options. So you're able to maybe even get a little bit more of that wish list really, really focused in. And so that way you're not seeing 20 homes that all at the end of the day start to look and sound the same when you're trying to figure out which bathroom went to this house. And by the end, you made a whole new house mixed with all the features of everything you've met. And I'm telling you this because it's true. Like they start to blend in, this, right? And so, the more narrow you are, the more opportunity you get to exactly what you're looking for in those price points, the easier it is to have a great lender, right? Understand that whether or not, if interest rates are the problems, right? Right now we have a 1% buy down for 12 months with our lender. Make sure that you know exactly what you're qualified for. Make sure you know exactly what your payment wants to be, right? Those things matter. So you're going out there with a purpose.
Yep.
I think also, like, before you make an offer, make sure that your agent, if it's not one of ours, if you're watching this and you're working with someone else, that they're checking to make sure that the house is properly valued. And because it doesn't matter what it's listed at or whether there's been price reductions. If we just saw a house the other day with a $185,000 price reduction. Did it have a price reduction or was it priced wrong from day one?
Yep.
And so the market's going to dictate that. So making sure that we know exactly. So those are things that you can do. These data points are just going to show you what's trending and where everybody is.
Yep.
And if you're an agent out there watching, you're going and saying, well, what does this mean for my business? It means you have to know where the buyers are.
Just touching on all 3 of those points. For buyers, it's a great opportunity. Homes are still appreciating. You're able to get pretty good deals on homes if you work with the right agent. For buyers too, you want to work with an agent who's consultative. You were talking about showing too many homes, and I think where my head went with that is comes from sitting down and having somebody ask you questions that leads to eliminating homes from your search, right? And sometimes those questions are hard to ask yourself, and it's a little easier from somebody who has experience seeing this over and over. Sellers, you're holding tight. Your home's still appreciating. There are homes that are selling. You need premium pricing right now, premium marketing. Those are just, it's everything right now to have a premium price and premiumly marketed. For real estate agents, yeah, you've got to learn to find where the buyers are. I think there's a lot of real estate agents that lived in that 2021, 2022 period where life was great because their aunt and uncle and cousin, everybody in the world was coming off to buy a new house, buy an investment property, refi. There was so much opportunity that was happening. But we are now where there is less people that are trying to transact, and there's more real estate agents because that's grown each year. So that means that we're in a supply and demand issue as well. So you have to know where to find the people and be willing to do the work in order to identify them and get them to work with you.
Absolutely. And if we didn't touch anything on any of these and you have questions, put them down in the comments and let us know what questions you might have. We might be able to answer it with some of our data points we didn't get to in this video. If you could like, comment, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, subscribe and kind of follow and let us know whether or not we're doing a good job on this. We try to put out stuff that's relevant and useful and for most of us interesting, right? As we, depending on your point, but obviously necessary, right? Because you have to know what it is that you're doing out here. If you're on the buying or selling side, you have to really understand what's happening so that you have good expectations. So until then, we'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a blessed day.